Folks, I promise this is the last time you'll see me on the stage. The next panel is not by me. But yes. Woo! Arjun has, fun fact is, he just landed this morning and just caught about a couple of hours of sleep. But with his
And it's my first time in Vietnam. And Arvind told me that this is the nap time. So hopefully we'll keep you guys engaged and excited.
Yeah, I think the content on this one is good enough to get people up. But yeah, you don't look like you slept only for 3 hours, man. You look good and love
I
the
slept
color
on the
of the
plane
blazer.
as well. But really happy to be with all of you and really hope that this 20, 30-minute session can add value to your lives, and hopefully we can spend more time after the session as well.
Great. Thank you so much. So I think from morning, we've been talking about conversion rate optimization, retention, the other tactics to improve business. But the fundamental for a business is we need a seed or a wherewithal for it. So the topic or the fireside chat over here is about fundraising for both e-commerce brands and for enablers. And we couldn't get anyone better than Arjun, who's the poster boy of D2C in India. He said it's the first time in Vietnam, so let's give him a huge round of applause to welcome Arjun over here. Great. So Arjun, I have a mixed bag of questions. So right, strategic, pointed, detail-oriented. The stage is not new for you, so I'll let you do it. So quick perspective on Arjun and Arjun's background, right? So Arjun started as a D2C operator. He had his family-owned brand, which is called Dr. Vaidya's, who are in the wellness space. He built along with his family and his wife. He scaled it and saw a huge valuation exit of 250 crores Indian rupees. And post that, he started his own venture firm, V3 Ventures. And now he's parking his money both on D2C brands and V3 Ventures. Arjun, before we dive in, right, would love for you to give a small story, a deep dive of your journey.
Sure, yeah, so I'll keep it quick, but get you the relevant tidbits that make it sort of an e-commerce journey on both sides. So I moved back to India in 2013. 2013 was pretty much when the e-commerce wave was starting in India. I'd done my undergrad in the US 2009 to 13. So I started using e-commerce more than most people in India were using e-commerce. And I joined a private equity investing fund called L Capital Asia, based in Singapore. Now it's called L Keratin. And because I was the youngest member of the team, on my first day of work, my boss said, hey, it seems like there is this company that's trying to sell clothes and shoes and accessories online. I don't know if Indians will buy clothes online, but why don't you look at it? And she put a deck on my table, and that time we used to print the PDFs and keep it, right, 2013. The company is called Myntra, and it's now the largest fashion e-commerce marketplace in India. It's ubiquitous with behavior online, but that shows how fast the world has moved in the last 12 years. So I became the point person for the fund on e-commerce across Asia. And I was 21 at the time, 21, 22, 23. By the time I was 23, I realized that I'm investing my boss's investors' money. So clearly there's a large gap between me and who's investing the money. And so I became interested in doing something more early stage. My family has been in the Ayurveda or traditional Indian herbal wellness space for the last 150 years. That's what my last name means as well. Vaidya means Ayurvedic doctor. And my granddad, great-grandfather were all Ayurvedic doctors. They own these proprietary recipes and formulations, one of which was my first launch, a hangover product. But we had many other products in the health and wellness space as well. And so when my grandfather passed, he left behind a clinic and some formulations and a small manufacturing facility. And so I said, look, there's an opportunity to take this to modern consumers outside of a clinic using the power of digital. So we launched Dr. Vaidya's in 2017. It was the first wave of e-commerce brands, D2C brands. We've had horizontals like Amazon and Flipkart, and then verticals who are building in specific spaces like personal care, beauty, medicine, baby products, but no real D2C only brand. Right? And so we decided to launch in the space of Ayurveda DTC brand. In 5 years, we went from 0 to 5,000 orders a day, reached 2 million transacting customers. The biggest success of Dr. Vaidya's was not that we launched 80 products, that we won some awards, that we sold our business. We reached 16,500 zip codes. That means 65% of India's zip codes from one warehouse in one city on the western part of India. And that's really the power that all of us in this room have with e-commerce, right? The panelists before were talking about brands across the globe that we can sit here in this room in Hanoi, Vietnam and talk about. And that's the power of what e-commerce does, connects the world. I raised one round of capital and then eventually in 2021 summer, sold the business to my Series A investors. They bought the business, the brand continues to run. And at 29, I was free and had nothing to do in life. And so I said, it's too early to retire. So I'm going to figure out what's next. It started with just talking to founders, helping founders, giving 12, 15 hours of my week just to speak to founders. I had some money, but I had some time for helping people, giving some advice from my experience. And that's now led to my second leg of my journey. I've now angel invested in more than 150 companies. I run a fund which has invested about $45 million in the consumer space in India. And outside of being excited by D2C, which I'm of course excited by, and I've backed some very cool brands, I've also backed 25 or 26 e-commerce enablers in India as well. And that's a space that I'm very excited about because in 21, when I sold my business, I saw there was an e-commerce gold rush in India. And when you're in a gold rush, you can buy the gold or you can back the shovel. And I decided that I'll do both. So I've backed a lot of the most iconic e-commerce enablers in India. And Vargab, who's here with you as well, good friend of mine, come all the way from India. And I've pretty much traveled here to get his time because I don't get his time in India. And so he's going to talk to you more about that. But that's a little bit of the journey and background to set some context into the conversation.
Whoa, that's quite a journey for me to ask a lot of questions and pack it in 20, 30 minutes, but I'll do it justice. Arjun, when I was talking to people, right, when we were planning on having you here, people fondly call you as a poster boy of D2C world. What are the common questions that, people come and reach out to you and brands ask you for in advice or let's say in progress? If you can just share something.
Yeah, I think I was in a unique position to be one of the first 3 e-commerce or D2C brands in India to sell. And so when I sold, I guess a lot of people saw that I may have time, not about answers, I just have time to talk to people. I think the questions are common, and I would assume the questions are also common across the globe. But in India specifically, we have the same kind of questions that come up all the time. And the questions are the following. How do I get my first set of 1,000 customers? How do I solve the CAC issue because the CAC keeps rising? This thing called brand marketing or non-performance marketing is a black box. So how much do I spend on influencers and content and video that doesn't give me a direct ROI? Is it relevant to actually do any of this non-performance marketing? What is this thing called social media marketing? Is it relevant for my brand to go and create reels? Should founders be front-facing their brands and creating content? In India, we have a unique situation, which I don't know if we have in Vietnam, but in India, we're still at about 65 to 70% cash on delivery orders. And cash on delivery is a very risky proposition because there is no commitment that the user who's placed the cash on delivery order will actually accept the product. And so there's a lot of returns of people who ordered a product 4 days ago, the product reaches them, either they're not available at home or they decided they didn't want that product and it comes back to you. And the biggest challenge with that is you pay logistics twice. And that's what people think is the biggest challenge. But the bigger challenge is actually you get data of your performance marketing efficiency with a lag, which means if you think you're running at 3x ROAS and you have a 33% repeat rate or 33% return rate, you're not running at 3x ROAS, you're running at 2x ROAS. And you know that only 2 weeks later when the products actually come back to you and you log all the products that come back to you, right? So I think these questions, and of course the perennial question, because I'm an investor now, how do you raise money? What's the right time to raise money? Who should I raise money from? Is the market hot or is it cold? I think these are the questions that come by to me.
Well, good to know. Of course, when you have someone who's walked the mile, you're always curious to know, but good to know. I'll avoid the cliche questions on this one, Arjun. That's like 2 pages off. Okay. But I have a personal question, Arjun. From your founder's journey, right? 250 crores is a massive milestone. I'm sure you'd have had other investment opportunities. How did you analyze which one to pick and the timing on when you should liquidate, right? How did you narrow that down?
I'll answer the second question first and go into how to look at investment opportunities. So a lot of people, when I sold my business in 2021, exits were still new. And so maybe some of you will be surprised to know that in the initial days, the exit of my company was not really celebrated. A lot of people actually thought that we sold because of greed. Mm-hmm. Some people told me that my dad needed money and sold, so I sold my business to give my dad some money because his business was struggling. But really the concept of exits was not really well understood in India, and I can tell you in the last 4 years that's changed and people are celebrating it. I think they're celebrating it a bit too much. So I now get founders who come to me and say, I'm inspired by you, Arjun. You sold your business. I want to sell my business like you. Not you built a good business, you built a good brand, you built good resonance. I just want to make money like you did. And that's the most dangerous thing that can happen, right? Because if you build a business to sell a business and you can't sell that business, you're in deep trouble. Yeah. Because you have a business you don't like and you can't do anything with it, right? So why did we sell when we sold? The first thing I'll tell you is that half of you in this room probably wouldn't have sold when we sold, right? Like if Varga was sitting in my shoes, maybe he would have stayed. Maybe Varga believed that this was a 25-year journey and maybe he was right as well. But that right or wrong on when to liquidate is not something that any of us can comment on for anybody else. Because that is the right decision for that person at that time. And so for me at that time, I'll maybe share with you some reasons why we decided to sell the business when we did. One, it was the peak of the e-commerce valuation revolution in India. Businesses were getting sold at crazy multiples. We sold our business, I'll share with you guys in this room, at 7 times sales. That's not happening in India anytime soon. And not 7 times sales with a profitable business, with a not so profitable business as well. So it was a peak of the valuation sort of the cycle in India. The other thing was, to be honest, I did not foresee the ability to grow e-commerce businesses as fast as it happened, right? So we have this magic number in India called 100 crores. 100 crores is, at today's exchange rate, maybe 13 million US dollars. That was a massive number at the time when I started building. In 2016, 17, when I started building my business, we would think that 100 crore was like this mythical creature, this unicorn, this thing that you tried to reach but couldn't reach. And then when I reached it, I thought, wow, this is it. It's the end of the road for me. I probably can't scale further than this. And so when we sold the business, we were doing an ARR of 100 CR or 100 crores. And so I didn't think there was the ability to expand an e-commerce business much more than that. And I thought the next leg of growth for the brand would have been offline. To be honest, there are many people that have proven me wrong and reached the 200, 300, 400, 500 crores online only. But at the point where I was sitting and thinking about it, I thought 100 crores was already large. And offline was something I sucked at. I tried to launch my brand offline before I launched it online. Very few people know that, and I did really badly. I failed miserably. I pulled that back in 6 months. And so I said, if this brand really has to go offline going forward, I'm not the right person. And so maybe selling it is the right thing. So that's the reason I sold the business at that time. But as I said, you guys in the room may have taken a different decision, but that was not your decision to take. It was my decision to take. And so I see a lot of people in India at least commenting on people's exits. I think it's the worst thing in the world to do. You can't decide for anybody else what they're doing. It's like you telling me I named my kid wrong. How can I decide what someone else should name their kid?
We tune out the signal and noise, but all right, that's quite insightful over there, right? It's a big transition from a D2C founder to an investor. I'm sure your mindset changes a bit onto that. How are you currently seeing, or what macros are you tracking, which you foresee for the next 3 to 5 years for both D2C brands and for the enablers out here?
Yeah, I'll share that macro. I guess everybody's tracking Trump's tariffs, right? And what happens with that and how our brands become more competitive globally. I'll maybe talk about 5 trends that I'm tracking in India, which are probably relevant for the entire Asian continent, right? So 5 trends I've seen in India over the last couple of years that have become relevant. So the first one is that I believe that all of our Asian brands will become much more globally competitive because there's aspiration towards the quality of our manufacturing, the quality of our products, and in the Western markets, there's aspiration for our products as well, right? So we saw a brand doing personal care using matcha and boba. 10 years ago, maybe nobody would be interested in that today. If you walk the streets of New York or London or Paris or LA, you'll see these products everywhere, right? And so our aspiration towards Indian Ayurveda, towards Indian yoga, towards Southeast Asian wellness, personal care, cosmetics, that's there. And with that, it's our opportunity to go and leverage this opportunity. I think the biggest travesty for India as a country is we didn't own the yoga revolution. Yoga is a multi-billion-dollar business in the US, and Indian companies don't own that. Lululemon is not an Indian company, it's an American company, right? So I think owning the globalization of our culture, history, legacy, and taking our brands global is one trend. The second trend I'll say is that, and we have quick commerce platforms here in Southeast Asia as well. In India, it's a behavior that's become absolutely addictive in that you now get everything from a cell phone SIM card to a car test drive to passport size photos, printouts, beauty personal care, luggage, apparel, everything in a 15-minute horizon, right? Now, that's great, but what does that do to our e-commerce world? When I was talking to, I teach e-commerce at a university close to my office in Bombay, and I was talking to those kids, they said we don't even go on Amazon anymore because Amazon takes 3 days to deliver. Right. And so we only go on quick commerce platforms, which means as e-commerce businesses, fast delivery is the bare minimum you can offer. If you take more than 24 hours to deliver to a metro city, your business may get eaten up, right? And so that delivery experience is crucial. I think the third thing is as our e-commerce markets mature, the first wave of e-commerce brands was solving big problems. Like take my example, right? I was solving a generalized Ayurveda problem. I was an Ayurvedic products brand. Today's Ayurveda brands are doing sports nutrition X Ayurveda, women X Ayurveda, senior citizen only Ayurveda. So the market's getting bigger, allowing niche brands to also reach 20, 30, $50 million. And so smaller niches may not be the wrong decision. The fourth one I'll say is performance marketing alone is not enough. If you don't couple performance marketing with organic marketing, there's a law of diminishing marginal utility and your ROAS will go down. And the last thing I'll say is that, we were talking about loyalty, we were talking about discount coupons. Customer delight is an underrated thing in e-commerce all across the world. If you give a customer a freebie, if you give them a call on their birthday, those things will make them remember you and build your word of mouth. So, yeah.
Pretty solid, pretty solid. I'll ask one last question. I'm sure all of you want your bandwidth on that. As an investor, what's your checklist when different brands or enablers come and pitch to you, right? What do you see when you evaluate them?
So, maybe 3 things across all kinds of businesses, right? I invest early stage, and so I invest before the business is a success. And in that stage of business, 50% of my decision will go on the founder. Who is that founder? Why do they have a right to win? And something people don't talk about is why will they fight through tough times? When we read the news, when we see all these YouTube podcasts, when we see social media, it seems like everything's a smiley, happy journey. But every business has cycles, and in those down cycles, grit and resilience is crucial. So 50% of my decision is who is that founder? 20% of my decision is what's the market size and growth in that market available, right? If I invest in a business which is so niche that the market is growing 10%, even if I'm the market leader, I can grow at best 15 or 20% year on year. I should be able to see 5, 10x growth in the business that I'm investing in, and the market should be able to support that. You can't just blame founders, right? So 20% is on market size, and then 30% of the decision is on the numbers, revenue, gross margin, bottom line profile, CAC, LTV, repeat rates, and the team. So 50% founder, 20% market size and possibility of growth of market, and 30% on the numbers and the team.
Oh, that's a straight access to a $45 million award check if you want to get to Arjun. I know we are right on time, but I just want to see if audience, you have any questions that you want to ask Arjun. Of course, he'll be available post the channel, but just want to see if any of you have any questions. Yeah.
Thanks. Arjun, great story. Thank you for sharing so candidly. I'm curious about your worst investment mistake. Was it a mistake of omission or the opposite?
I'll share a story which is quite viral in India right now, and on point. We were talking about it just recently. So the theme is FOMO, right? And fortunately, it wasn't my investment mistake, but it's my family's money because my younger brother made the mistake. There's a EV cab company in India called Blue Smart. All of us loved the product and loved the service. They had the most reliable cabs. They never canceled. They always came on time. They gave you a better experience than Uber or the Indian equivalent Ola gave you. Lovely cars. But it all started seeming too good to be true, right? Like I went to Dubai and I got an Audi e-tron at the same price as a normal Hala taxi, which is the equivalent of the black and yellow cab there. And they would reach 15 minutes before I called them and they'd be waiting there and they had water in the cab for me and they would open the door. So it just seemed like it was too good to be true. My brother met this founder and the guy was very suave and spoke really well. And my brother said, like, this guy seems to know everything about EV space. But I told him, I see a good article about this guy every single month. And some of these articles in the press have nothing to do with his business. Like, he's not even grown the business from last month to this month, but there's smoke screens he's trying to create, so there's something wrong. Eventually, the founder had a listed company that raised some debt to give his startup money to lease EV cabs. He used only 60% of that money to lease EV cabs and 40% of that money to buy himself a golf set, get a beautiful home in the most expensive building in India, and fund personal expenses, right? So Blue Smart, until 2 months back, was one of the hottest companies in India, but nobody read the numbers because the founder created a smoke screen. And so the biggest mistake you can make in early stage investing is it's a momentum business with asymmetric information. It's very easy to build FOMO, and so staying away from FOMO would be the mistake. And I make the FOMO mistake enough. I shared my brother's mistake because I didn't want to share mine.
Thanks for being candid. I think that's been our time. Thank you so much, Arjun, for flying in and being candid. So Arjun has been kind enough to hang around at the end of the day. If you have any questions, you reach out to Arjun.
Yeah, it's my first time here in Vietnam, and I'm going to be here for another 24 hours. So I'm happy to spend time with you guys and also get shown a good time as well.